POV block, it's a POV switch. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Listen to Pavarotti.
Can I be your superhero?
Hello, welcome to The Revealing. I am your host, Pavarotti, and I'm here to discuss the Idaho 4 case. And folks, let me just tell you, I know people get tired of hearing me say it, but hold on to your hats. Hold on to your socks. Tighten that belt extra tight, because if not, once again, you will be naked by the end of this video, because I intend to blow it all off of your body. And, you know, sometimes it takes months and months and months to gather enough information to finally be able to put a finger on certain things in this case. But have you ever noticed how old Pav, he seems to have content every day? I mean, people are like, he's making stuff up. You know, when you follow truth and you follow the facts, the content is just always going to be there, because there's so many truths and so many facts hidden in this case. If you follow the right path, you'll uncover them. You'll always have content. You don't get stuck on one thing that doesn't make any sense and then have to pound it over and over and over, and it never goes anywhere. It's what I try to warn people about. People, just think I'm being mean and disregard what I say. A lot of you out there don't, though. And my other favorite thing is why Bob changes his story, changes his theories. Bob don't change his theories, but I do put out many different hypotheses. And it's based on certain situations and the evidence that's available to us. Now, unlike a lot of people, once I see the evidence, once it's released, if it doesn't match up what I'm thinking happened at that particular point, then yeah, I will take the new evidence and then I will either cross it out, or I will go in another direction, or I will continue down that path if the evidence backs up my hypothesis. And that's why I've put out so many different videos around the atrocity in this case. I'm putting out videos because I'm logging in my mind, okay, this is what I've got now. This is what it all tells me. That way I know when the information comes out to revisit those things, and I know that they're either right or they're wrong. And I'm going to show you that in real time in this one. And if you hang with me to the end of this one, even guilters and POV haters out there that have flipped the POV switch, if they have the POV block, you hang to the end of this video. Listen to everything I'm going to tell you, and even you may become a fan of old POV, because it's going to get real. And I put this video out. I'm going to show you several of the videos that I've put out here over the last several months, and I'm going to show you clips from them, and I'm going to show you how I work in real time. And by the end of this, you'll understand completely the results that I'm able to get by working this way. But when I put this one out the other day, you'll see that I have my likely perpetrators listed here. And then I had a couple of these blacked out, and I had conspirators, and you can see I had percentages there. Those percentages have gone up just a little bit. I'm not going to put a new percentage on them in this video, but a lot of people wondered who were under these cards, and let me just unveil them real quick. Bam. And when I say conspirators, I know they weren't part of the atrocity because of the forensic results. However, it has long been my thought that somebody had to keep an eye on the victims before this thing took place, so that certain people would know when they were home. And my mind has been always that one young man, we've seen him with them, keeping an eye on them, and I mean, it's kind of in black and white, so he'd be the likely candidate for letting people know when somebody's coming home. But then there was always the other one that I couldn't quite put my finger on, and somebody had to be watching Xana and Ethan to let people know when they got home. And what I'm going to show you in this video is proof beyond a shadow of a doubt of one thing that people have speculated for a long time, and that is a parallel investigation. I'm also going to point out something else that I've suggested for quite some time, And that is the fact that the ISP, the Idaho State Police, they were a completely different entity and in some ways working on their own information in this case. And you can really tell that when you listen to the interview with Dylan Mortensen by Gooch. Just a little bit different questioning there. And everything that I've looked at with the ISP, it seems to kind of be an outside entity in this investigation. And I'm going to prove that in this video. You're going to freak out when I get to the end of this. It took me a long time to put it together. But I'm also going to show you some things that I have speculated on that obviously wasn't correct. When I got enough information, I was able to back out of that. And then I'm going to, it's just hold on to your hats, folks. You may want to, I would say put your hands over your ears so your brains don't blow out your head, but then you wouldn't hear what I'm saying. Let's roll. First, a quick refresher on the special agent for the FBI, Ryan O'Neal, and what his expertise is with the FBI, so that you know why I focus in when Ryan O'Neal is mentioned in the Idaho 4 case. But Boston Police Detective Stephen McManus was assigned to a Federal Bureau of Investigation Drug and Gang Task Force beginning in 2008. McManus worked alongside other task force members out of the FBI office in Boston, where he was supervised by FBI Special Agent Richard Tehan. In April of 2010, the task force retained Darren Sheridan as an informant. Over the course of the spring and summer months of 2010, McManus worked with Sheridan on at least 17 task force investigations. Task force members learned in August of 2010 that Sheridan had engaged in unauthorized illegal activities by purchasing CC and MJ. And on August 17th, the task force disclosed Sheridan's illegal activities to the United States Attorney's Office. On August 25th, Special Agent Ryan O'Neal, Sheridan's handler on the task force, met with Sheridan and prepared a lengthy task force memorandum detailing Sheridan's unauthorized purchases of controlled substances. Handwritten at the top of this report is a note from Task Force Supervisor Tehan authorizing continued use of Sheridan on a strict case-by-case basis. So Sheridan was their informant. Ryan O'Neal is working for the Drug and Gang Task Force as the special agent who is the handler for their confidential informants. And even though Sheridan had totally annihilated his own ability to be an informant by knowingly purchasing narcotics, well, Tehan and O'Neal, they went ahead and said, now we're going to use him anyways and continue to use him. All right, 247.31, you hear the pipes. Now, that's not to be confused with the same pipes that you hear on Hunter's Jeep at 4:30. This is a completely different vehicle, and we know this. Here it comes. There it goes, and it's going to pull into the Queen Road Apartments right here. And I went through the FBI movements of Gill and Slocum. Now, I didn't know about Malwich at the time, so I thought Slocum had to be there. But now that I know about Malwich and his connection to Slocum and Gill, I know now that Slocum didn't have to be there. It was likely Malwich. Then when I finally got to see this video, and I know now that that vehicle is not black, I knew I had it wrong on that part. There's things that I'm going to point out that I believe the Idaho State Police documents, along with our investigation, are going to prove to be very likely. And that is the first part I just discussed, along with surveillance help from a very well-known person in this crime and his possible help in this has nothing to do with a fraternity, okay? And I'm also going to point out where there is an unnamed 21-year-old male that lived there that was associated with this young man that lives in Boise, Idaho, is also going to play a part in the surveillance, and I believe is going to be the direct contact to one of the roommates in this atrocity. And I believe the Idaho State Police believe this as well. This individual right here that I haven't identified yet, whose responsibility was to keep an eye on when Xana would be coming home. And then this individual was responsible for keeping an eye on when Maddie would be coming home. And this individual would be responsible of telling them when everything was clear in the house. Vince attached these to everything on November the 19th, 2022 for immediate release. Moscow PD press release. What did they try to tell us? At this time in the investigation, detectives do not believe the two surviving roommates or the male in the grub truck surveillance video are involved in this crime. Additionally, online reports of victims being tied and gagged are not accurate. The identity of the 911 caller has not been released. Well, although I haven't seen anything in the docs that say that the victims were tied and gagged, I'm not going to discount it at all. But the two surviving roommates and the male in the grub truck surveillance video, they don't believe they're involved in this crime. Well, I call BS on that one. I might mention that this video was long before we knew Steve G said in that closed hearing that the victims were likely bound and gagged. So we're going to start right here on November 16th, 2022 from the ISP at approximately 3:16, Idaho State Police Investigations. Lieutenant Caitlin and I interviewed Jack S. The interview took place at his parents' house located in Boise, Idaho. And during the interview, he stated the following. His residence at school was blank, Moscow, Idaho. His residence is approximately 200 to 300 feet from the location of the unaliving. That means his residence was at the Queen Road Apartments. Jack was at the grub truck with them, but was hanging out in the back because he was not getting any food. Someone in a silver sedan picked up Mogan and Gonzalez. He assumed it was one of their friends. Jack told Mogan to have a good night. Jack's designated driver's shift had already ended at approximately 2 a.m. Jack had a good coat on, so he walked home. And he thought it took him 20 to 30 minutes to walk home from the grub truck. Jack said he got home around 3 a.m. and went to bed. Jack showed on a map the way he walked home, and the way he described did not pass the residence of the unaliving scene. Sunday, November 13th, Jack woke up around 10 a.m. to watch NFL football. He left his house and went to Floyd's Cannabis Shop, y'all, a dispensary across the border in Washington. He couldn't remember if he went to Floyd's before he started watching football or if he started watching football, then went to Floyd's. He thought it was weird because he drove past the scene on his way to Floyd's and didn't see any police or anything out of the ordinary. Jack drove a blank. Okay, so what Jack is saying is he drove his car to Floyd's. What kind of car does Jack drive? We now know that Jack drives a light-colored BMW, certainly not a black BMW. I think that might be important. We're going to find out later that Jack messed up right here, okay? Keep that as a mental note. During the morning, people called him to see if he knew what was going on down the street of the unaliving scene. Jack didn't believe them, walked outside to see. Jack had to walk down the street to see the residence homicide scene. There was a rumor of an unconscious person, which seemed believable. During the group chat between the pledge classes from the fraternities and for sororities, kids realized people were missing, and something more than a person passed out might have happened. Most of his chats are via Snapchat. Some of the family members of the victims started letting people know about the unalivings before the news did, I bet. Jack heard a lot of people were packing up and leaving. Jack felt jumpy, even leaving his apartment and walking out to his car. He would be able to do classes online, so he packed up the next morning, Monday, November the 14th, and left. He had only been to the residence where the unaliving took place maybe once. When he did go there, he was pretty sure it was all different people living there. He had heard there was a party earlier that day that some of his friends went to. Now, with consent, I collected buccal swabs from Jack. He had no apparent injuries to his hands, forearms, head, or neck areas. The interview ended at 4:02. So the buccal swabs and audio recording of the interview were submitted as evidence. So this was on November the 16th. Now, this right here clears Jack from actually being involved in the actual atrocity. He's got no injuries on his hands, forearms, head, or neck. He gave his buccal swab, so there should be no reason to keep investigating Jack. Now, if they do keep investigating Jack, though, that means that they thought Jack was playing some other type of role in this because they knew he wasn't involved in the atrocity itself. And you're going to see that they did not stop investigating Jack on November 16th, even though that press release sure said they did. Because a lot of the statements that Jack just gave in here, we're going to find out were not consistent with reality. Now, let me point this out because this really took me a long time to figure this part out. And that is right here where it says items 1 and 2. I want you to remember that for later on. So when we go to this report, we'll see that on November 17th, 2022 at 9:45, ISP Detective Leslie Lehman and Detective Cody Herman responded to Floyd's Cannabis Shop located at blank in Pullman, Washington. I met with the store manager, blank blank, and got receipts and video footage and store member history were provided by blank regarding visits made to the store by Jack. And I like how it says involvement suspect, right? And we got this individual born in 2000, and that's him in Boise. And the witness one that they're talking to at Floyd Cannabis Shop was a female. But you can see that on November 17, 2022 at 9:45, Idaho State Police Detective Lehman and Herman responded to Floyd Cannabis Shop, and they got receipts, video footage, and store member history were provided to visits made to the store by Jack. And it says Jack visited Floyd's on November 13, 2022 at 10:49 hours. So we know Jack's statement, that much of a statement anyways, was true. Jack's purchase was trackable through a receipt and a store membership program. Jack provided somebody provided printouts of Jack's receipt and his purchase history starting on September 14, 2022. Using the timestamp on the receipt, the video footage was reviewed. Jack can be seen parking in front of the store, exiting a black BMW. Jack was dressed in a University of Idaho gray sweatshirt, black pants, and wearing a brown beanie. He took still shots of the video and forwarded them via text to FBI agent Rob Hilley. Okay, so for those of you that watch me, you know that all came from a video that I did about 4 months ago after they released the ISP reports. Now, since then, we've located through the ISP reports Mowich. I've connected Mowich directly to Slocum and Gill, which told me that Slocum and Gill didn't have to be in the area during the time of the atrocity. In fact, they probably created their own alibi so that they knew they wouldn't be there and couldn't be tied to it because they had their inside guy of Mowich. So all you do is take out Slocum and add Mowich where Slocum is. Everything else fits. Except that car that pulls in at 248 obviously wasn't a black BMW. It was some kind of white sport utility. We later go on to discover that Mowich likely didn't get out of that vehicle anyway. He got out of a vehicle that pulled in on Linda Lane, on 1320 Linda Lane, and proceeded to the house from there. So that's how you take evidence that you think you have at the time and then absolutely adjust everything based on released evidence. But now we know that Jack doesn't drive a black BMW, but he was seen in a black BMW at Floyd's Cannabis Shop. And we know that Jack said he didn't know if he left his house before or after football started. Well, I can tell you football starts at, in Mountain Time it'd be 11 o'clock. up there in Moscow. Where I'm at, it's at noon. All football starts the same time every Sunday. So we know it was before 11 o'clock. And then what did we just find out? Well, the video footage put him at Floyd's at 10:48. So that means he likely left the King Road neighborhood sometime between 10 and 10:48. We now have the video footage of the King Road neighborhood between 10 and 10:48 from Miss Jules. Did a great job collecting that evidence. Let's watch it in fast motion, see if we see a black BMW pull out between 10 and 10:48. All right, I got this on 2x speed, and then I'm going to go ahead, instead of just staring at it, I'm going to go ahead and zoom through, and we'll look at any activity between 10 and 10:48 here. Let's see, speeding up, speeding up. Where you at, Showalter? What are we, what? So right here we have, oh, here's a car. Remember though, Showalter lives way back behind the Queen Road apartments and the little other building back there. And so that certainly isn't a black BMW. Let's keep going here. What is this? Oh, here comes a little car parking at the window house. Oh, a little girl with a junk in the trunk there, looks like. Let's keep going. Let's see, what do we got here? Oh, here comes a car. Remember, I'm in 2x speed. That's why they're going so fast. So, girl getting home to 1112. And goodness, as cold as it is there, all these youngsters are practically naked. Little further, little further. Where you at, Showalter? A little further. What do we got? Oh, we got something here. Let's see. There's is that Regan walking his dog? And then we've got a car pulling out up there. Oh, what we got here? 1032. Well, that one is that's a Ford. Ford with a camper. It's at 1032. It's going the wrong way, so that one's not heading to Floyd's cannabis shop. I think we're kind of past the mark where you could get to Floyd's cannabis shop. Well, there comes somebody going to Jack D's apartment complex. But yeah, we're at 1034. I mean, I think you'd have to leave about right now to even make it to Floyd's cannabis by 1048. What do we got here? Yep, that's a maroon Chevy. Let's look one more time. I'll slow it down just to. What have we got? Does this in any way resemble a black BMW? And I would say no. Doesn't resemble a black BMW, and I don't think that vehicle could hit Floyd's cannabis shop by 1048. So I got to say that's not it either. Anything else coming through here? Let's see. Anything else? Well, we're now at 1040. There's no way you're making Floyd Cannabis Shop past this point. Well, here's somebody. What do we got here? 10:45. It's going the wrong way. That is a Jeep. So we're at 10:48. He's not making it to Floyd's. There goes the 1112 girls. At least one has pants on. There's another person walking their dog. A lot of people walk their dogs out there, don't they? Oh, there goes a car. It looks like a Chevy, and it's black, but it's too late in the day for that one.
Again, they don't write reports well. And this whole time, what we've been doing is we've been looking at this report like when this guy gave his story, he gave his original story to an FBI agent. So this FBI agent should have a report of it, but Ann Taylor had this FBI agent on her list. But this was the way that this was wrote. We don't know if it was said this way, but the way that it was wrote is that something happened about a month prior, to the murders. And it actually makes no sense as to why somebody would call and say anything and give this type of a story. But nonetheless, I was determined to figure out why a name NM, their autopsy, was part of this case. What I mean by that is it was entered into evidence back on right here. It was entered into evidence on January 5th, 2023. Nobody that is dead had the names and the initials NM. Okay. So it was entered in on 1/5/2023, item number 31, NM autopsy photos. Okay. Well, we've made some headway. We've made some headway. Oh, there we go. There we go. The story, though. So back, he said, on one of their trips, he said that they were leaving Lewiston and heading for Moscow when a car crash happened in front of them. He stated the driver was ejected through the front windshield, but survived. He stated he stopped at the crash and waved and waited for police to arrive, spoke to them briefly, and then continued on to Moscow. Okay. And basically, the police are like, we're not gonna, like, this dude's a liar. This guy's a liar. I looked this stuff up. We can't find anything. Blah blah blah. Well, I said, you know what? I think the story might be a little bit different because I don't trust the way they write reports. So I know that people are saying in chat that, yep, Shelly, it's so and so. Well, guess what? We're going to talk about something. We're going to talk about, though, how the dates have nothing to do with what they wrote in this report, and that there's something to actually look at instead, which is the fact that Gary Tolson, again, just a phenomenal human being and just an even greater detective, said no one ever. Him and Leslie Lehman were tasked, and again, why are you giving these people these jobs? They were tasked with, and same with Mike Van Leuven. And Mike Van Leuven, again, Idaho State Police, the same people that did the Drake case, just such phenomenal detectives. They start calling around and asking if anybody has come in with like stab wounds, things of that nature. And Van Leuven's just blown away when he sees that nobody in any of these areas, except for in Kootenai County, there was like 77, but everywhere else, nobody else. Okay. So long story short, I wanted to go and look at what was going on in Lewiston around the time of the murders. And I came across, so I went to the 911 incident reporting. Okay. And here's a couple of them for you. Male yelling at female in a vehicle. Male has been asked to leave and has not. White male, shaved head, silver jacket, 5'5", blue shirt, jeans, something in his hand that looks like a knife. Reporting party no longer sees him, thinks he walked away. Okay. Next. Vehicle looks like it blew its radiator, has a bucket under it, has been there about a week. It's all going to come full circle here in a minute. Let me just read these. Next, 400 Burrell Avenue. Parking lot at the baseball field. Black Mercedes. Looks like it's been in an accident. Bing, 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 bing. Okay. I was like, oh, I'm interested in this black Mercedes. I'm interested in this black Mercedes here. Who would just leave a black Mercedes chilling in a parking lot at a baseball field? Looks like it's been in an accident. Okay. Well. Okay. So Gary Tolson, who wrote this up? Yeah, good old Gare. Okay, this is on November 21st. Okay. And Gary says that on Monday, November, this is the part that everybody, fuck the name. The name doesn't matter right now. The name doesn't matter. You're missing the big part of the information. Okay. Monday, 21st, 2022. Somebody that works at the hospital is how this all got started. Somebody that works at the hospital saw something and was like, this is not consistent with a car accident. And let me read you what's going on. On Monday, November 21st, 2022, the FBI received an anonymous call about an unnamed person being brought into the blank in Lewiston, then being flown to Spokane to blank, blank, blank. The caller told the agent that this person was supposed to have been involved in an auto accident, but the injuries were not consistent with injuries sustained in an automobile collision. Unfortunately, the caller would not give the agent the name of the person they were calling about. Now, okay. Idaho State Police Detective Jake Schwecke contacted Lake Tahoe County Sheriff's Office and the Superior Sheriff's Office and the Lewiston Police Department. No collision was reported, but a vehicle registered to a blank blank that year was found abandoned in a field, and later blank was found partially clothed and injured wandering in the streets of Lewiston. This was on November 15th. So what I did is I went to the, like I was just reading for you guys, and then I find reopened call, suspicious person circumstance. See comments below suspicious man behind the library in the parking lot wearing black t-shirt, headed west, standing near red car, waving hands around, walking aimlessly. Okay. I said, I think this is it. Got to FOIA in on that. There you go. Okay. Then, blank was transported to the blank and later life flighted to the blank in Spokane. Detective Sergeant Michael Van Leuven contacted the blank and found out that blank had subsequently died while he was in the hospital. Mike Van Leuven, woo, he put him on something. He's like, oh my God, the guy just died on me. He just couldn't believe it. Oh my God, he's dead. Okay. So Mike Van Leuven's just fucking beside himself. Like, whoa, he's just dead, right? Gary Tolson's like, I contacted the Spokane Medical Examiner's Office in Spokane, Washington. I spoke with Deputy Medical Investigator Ricardo, whatever, Resida, whatever. He advised me that they did in fact have the body of blank, case number blank, and a full autopsy had been performed on November 21st, 2022. Okay. Now, what are the odds, guys? Okay, that they were able to literally, when they called, they're like, oh, hey, God, you're just in luck. We just did his autopsy and we just have this stuff just waiting for you, right? Well, we have it ready and waiting for you because we called you, motherfuckers. We've been waiting for you guys. We've called you, right? We've called you. Now, blank told me that he had contacted blank's mother, okay? Blank who told me that blank had been sober for the last 4 years, but 2 weeks prior to his death, he had left the house November 8th, 2022, and did not return. He was found wandering the streets of Lewiston with cuts and abrasions on his torso and arms and transported to the hospital. I requested copies of autopsy photographs so we could see what injuries the anonymous medical staff person was calling the FBI about. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like a big deal that somebody would realize that, hey, okay, dude, you know that stabbing that just happened? Like, this guy's all fucked up, you know? Well, Gary's like, I requested copies of the autopsy photos so we could see what injuries the anonymous medical staff person was calling about. Blank requested that I send his office the request in writing, which he did. I received the requested photographs via email from the medical examiner's office. I transferred the photographs to a compact disc and entered them into evidence with the Moscow Police Department. I also received a phone call from the medical examiner's office staff asking if I needed anything further. I requested they do DNA swabs. They told me that they would, but an ISP detective would have to take possession of the swabs once they're done. You guys, boom, where's his phone? Where's his phone? This would be so easy. Where's this dude's phone? Where's this car that was abandoned in the field? Because by my calculations, there's an abandoned Mercedes in a baseball field, okay, on November 15th. Nobody cares to ask any more questions. Like, just get the man's cell phone or figure out what his phone number was, right? Did he have a cell phone? Put him for the geofence and just be done with it, right? Wouldn't you be like reporting that and put that, it's just basically somebody else did that. And who did it? I'm guessing the FBI, right? Right.
Atlanta, I could be wrong, but I do believe that this MPD report written by Mowry on December 20th talked about a forensic extraction, and it was dated December 19th, and he talks about what he did on December 15th. I'm very curious to know if this says forensic extraction black, and he was requested to complete a forensic extraction on a Samsung cell phone provided by, I believe this says Lena Black, which would be Mawich's fiance. So if we could just get the actual name on that one, I think it might tell us a whole lot about that phone of Mawich's. Now, I wanted to throw that in there because, it may not be anything. One's talking about a Mercedes, a black Mercedes, and one's talking about a black BMW. It could be easily confused, though. One of them could be wrong. They could both be black Mercedes, but could both be black BMWs. One could have nothing to do with the other. Atlanta said she has a FOIA in on it, and I've been waiting patiently to see if she got anything else on that. And I also wanted to point out how, Atlanta is very sharp. And when she sees something that looks like it has something to do with something, she identifies it. And I applaud her for that. Y'all know I've covered all that information that she went over there because it is very important to my investigation into this case, as you know. But excellent job, Lynn. I wanted to throw that in there. Hope you don't mind me using that clip. But let's continue. I've got so much more to bring you on this. We're just getting started, but you got to get the build up before you get the bam. Now we're going to get Special Agent Ryan O'Neill involved. And he's going to be talking about a Boise, Idaho kid that was born in 2001 that was in the area at the time. And you'll see it's right here. And it's an unknown male, age 21, born in 2001. I believe it's right here. On November 18th, 2022, blank was interviewed by Federal Bureau of Investigation Special Agent Ryan O'Neill, the confidential informant handler, and Special Agent Christopher Sheehan. The following is an excerpt from an interview report by Special Agent O'Neill. Remember I said anytime you see O'Neill, you got to look close. At 4:30 p.m., blank got a text from blank that blank had gone home to take ibuprofen and stretch his back because his back was bothering him. Blank had been hunting recently and his back was sore from carrying his gear. Shortly thereafter, blank left the blank and met up with blank. They went to McDonald's and the blank near blank where they bought a case of beer. Blank has been identified as blank. And this is going to be Jack S. Okay. Detective Powell reviewed a camera angle, register 1, that showed both registers. From this camera, each patron and what they are purchasing is clearly visible. It did not appear blank or Jack purchased beer, or even entered the gas station from 4 to 6 p.m. because they're talking about surveillance video collected from a gas station on December the 3rd. So November the 18th is when they're taking these statements, but they're being followed up on these statements on December the 3rd. So they go to this gas station on December the 3rd, get video footage, and start to try to verify the statements that this 21-year-old and Jack S. had made to Special Agent O'Neill on November 18th. I hope that's as very clear to you. But on December the 4th, Detective Powell and I returned to the something and requested further footage from the same cameras and a few additional cameras. We requested copies of the recorded footage on November 12th, 2022 from noon until 4 p.m. and 6 until 10 p.m. A previous request had been made for recorded footage from November 12th, 2022 at 10 p.m. to November 13th at 6 a.m. So this must be the A&W root beer gas station. I left with 2 USB thumb drives. Detective Powell and I returned later that day and collected the footage recorded on November 12th, 2022 from 12 to 4 and 6 to 10. The other footage was not ready to be picked up. On December 5th, we returned to collect footage recorded on November 12th and November 13th at 6 a.m. And then they returned the USB drive over to me. Okay, so they're going to continue to go through this. And after review of this footage, it did not appear Blank or Jack purchased beer or even entered from 12 to 10. So the statement that this young man made about him and Jack going to the gas station and buying a case of beer after they verified the footage turned out that it was not true. And then they go as far as to continue to verify this information. On December 3rd, they went to the McDonald's in Moscow to collect surveillance footage. Powell and I identified ourselves, and I explained we needed to collect surveillance footage, and they showed us the camera views that they had at their store. We determined the most useful cameras to identify persons and vehicles and asked somebody to download the recorded footage of those cameras on November 12th from 4 to 6 p.m. We contacted an off-site tech support company to assist with the downloads, and they completed the downloads. And you can see on November 18th, Special Agent Ryan O'Neill interviewed the 2001 born kid, and they said they had got home. It's the same statement. They got home, they went to the store to buy beer, and they went to McDonald's, and they're verifying all that information through the camera footage at McDonald's right here of what their statement said. And they reviewed it. And they also watched the drive-through for vehicles matching the description of those commonly driven by that person or Jack, and did not see anything that matched. Now, this is in reference to a 21-year-old male that lives in Boise. And you can see he's a white male, 21 years of age, born in 2001. And he's listed as suspect, like suspect number 1 here. And it says on December 3rd, 2022, ISP detectives conducted surveillance at blank in Boise, Ada County, Idaho. The surveillance operation was conducted on a potential unaliving suspect identified as blank. So you don't see this statement mentioned very much in any of these documents. A potential unaliving suspect. I have only seen, I think this one actually referenced as that. And then it talks about their automobile, a 4-door silver aluminum something. And it says on December 3rd, this surveillance operation was conducted on a potential unaliving suspect. At approximately 11:55, surveillance units set up around the residence. So they went as far as setting up surveillance on this guy. ISP detective Pohanka observed 3 vehicles parked at the residence. They're a silver blank bearing Idaho plate blank registered to a blank in Boise, Idaho. At approximately 5:43, Detective Pohanka observed an individual believed to be blank leave the residence in the silver blank, and they took multiple routes in a random manner. The routes ultimately took surveillance units in multiple circles around the Boise area. At approximately 6:32, detectives observed blank return to his house. At 8:11, they observed this individual leave the residence. Surveillance units followed him to a gas station in Boise, Idaho. Idaho State Police Detective Cortez observed what appeared to be him go into the gas station. And then at 8:23, he left the gas station and drove to a residence near Blank Street in Boise, Idaho, and parked on the street. And he did not get out of the vehicle. At 8:30, he observed an individual get into the vehicle with him and them leave together. At 8:36, Blank and his passenger arrived back at the same gas station, and they observed the passenger get out of the vehicle and go into the gas station. At 8:41, Blank and his passenger left. At 8:46, surveillance units followed Blank to an apartment complex near the intersection of Blank and Boise, Idaho. All occupants of the vehicle got out and went into the complex. At 9:30, surveillance ended. On December 4th, ISP detectives set up surveillance on Blank, Boise, Idaho. At 3:44, Pohanka observed an individual believed to be Blank leave with his mom. Surveillance units followed them to the Blank located at Blank in Boise, Idaho. And then inside, they attempted to positively identify him, and they identified someone who looked like Blank, but was later identified to be Blank's brother. At 4:17, Blank and his mother arrived back at the house. They observed the individual appearing to resemble Blank leave the residence in the silver car. Detectives followed them to the gas station in Boise, and it just continues to go on until it says their surveillance ended at 7:30 p.m. So it's important to note that on December the 3rd, they're actually surveilling a potential unaliving suspect that is a 21-year-old born in 2001 white male who lives in Boise, Idaho. Why are they surveilling this Boise, Idaho kid? Interesting. But now when we go to this document, and we'll see here it's going to list witness number 4. Now instead of calling him a suspect, they're going to change it to witness. And again, it's a white male, age 21 in Boise. And why did he go from suspect to witness? Same way everybody else did. On December 4, 2022 at 3:05 p.m., I contacted Blank by phone and requested a DNA sample. Blank had been interviewed the previous day by ISP detectives. However, they had not collected a DNA sample, but they agreed to meet Blank at Blank in Moscow, Idaho to provide a DNA sample. At 2:42 p.m., Matt Heinel and I met with Blank and signed an ISP consent form before providing the sample. I provided Blank a new swab, which he used to swab the inside of his cheek. At about 3 p.m., I processed the DNA sample at the MPD into evidence and transferred it to MPD evidence technician Tim Smallridge. And you have to really go through these things with the dates to verify what happened with each one of these individuals. But that's why everybody goes from suspect to a witness in the case, because they know when they take their DNA, it doesn't match the DNA at the scene, so they're excluding them as actually being involved in the atrocity. But it doesn't mean that they're excluding them from involvement altogether, as I'll show you next. And that's why I say, whenever you see Ryan O'Neal, keep your eyes open. Now, this is on December the 6th. And what they've got listed in this is very interesting because this one's different than the rest of them when I look at it. December 6th, ISP Lieutenant Jack Caitlin and Sergeant Tompkins interviewed Jack S., and they reference his knowledge of the unalivings that occurred November 13th in Moscow, Idaho, and he was accompanied by his mother. And then it goes through the victims right here, but this is where it gets really interesting, because you're going to see that in this entire interview, it's only being conducted with Jack S. Yet for some reason, they're grouping it with these 4 individuals pertaining to this particular interview with Jack S. And the result of the interview is going to be him giving his fingerprints. And these aren't just any normal, let me get you prints. These are listed as major crime prints, y'all. And we'll get into it, but I think it's important to notice this grouping of people right here as I've gone through this timeline and why this grouping would be here. And you can see number one is the witness number one that they're going to be talking to, which is going to be Jack S., age 22, born in year 2000. And then we've got a 21-year-old, born in 2001, white male. And this is going to be the person that Jack S. was talking to where their stories didn't match up on the video footage. And then there's going to be white female, born in 2003, age 19. And I don't think you have to think too hard who this one is. This is going to be Miss D. And then you got this other white male born in 2001, age 21, and this is the one that they've had video surveillance on there in Boise. So what they're looking at is these two possibly being involved in some way, putting surveillance on the Boise guy, trying to connect him to her, and therefore to them too. And they're looking at these four as people surrounding this thing, I assure you. But you can see on December 6th, we just read this, the interview began with Jack and somebody discussing the online and social media harassment of their family, which I'm certainly not trying to do now. I'm just going through the reports and showing you what's up and what he's been dealing with since Sunday. And Jack informed me their family and friends, even her medical practice, is now being pulled into the online rumors. I informed blank I wanted to focus on the days prior to the unaliving. Jack described the days prior as the usual. He went out to the bars Thursday night for early weekend, stayed home Friday to recover from a hangover, complete some school assignments. Then he went out and drank on Saturday and stayed home to recover and watch football on Sunday. It was a typical weekend. He can't remember the weekend any different. I asked Jack if he knew about the sorority formal on Friday. He said maybe, but he really doesn't pay attention to such activities. He stated there's always something happening on campus. He doesn't follow all the activities. I asked Jack if he's aware there was a party at the house where the unalivings occurred on Friday night. He said he was unaware of the party on Friday, but thought there was a party at the house on game day Saturday. However, he was not sure there was a party at that house because there were 6 or 7 houses on King Street that Saturday having parties. And Jack only went to parties at the blank building on game day Saturday. Jack rarely attended such parties because many times there are freshmen and sophomores at the parties. He doesn't like partying with the younger classmen. And he usually stayed at his own apartment, attended function at his fraternity, or went to the bars. Therefore, Jack does not pay a lot of attention to parties off campus. I asked Jack to walk me through his entire day on Saturday, November 12th. He informed us it was difficult since he was drinking all that day. He did not attend the game, but did go to the party at blank. He went back to his apartment, then later out to the bars. Jack claimed he did not remember a lot of specifics, but there were people everywhere. He knew some of the people, many he did not know. Jack explained for the first 3 years of college, he had a girlfriend, was in a relationship. He did not really party and meet a lot of people during that time. He spent most of his time working on the relationship with individual relationship, working on his relationship. As a result, Jack does not know the number of people other seniors do, and he does not talk to the individuals he does not know. He believes since he does not know a lot of people and does not talk to a lot of people, he has a sus reputation. He preferred to hang out with friends. If he does not know someone, he doesn't talk to them. I then asked Jack if he was with blank on Saturday. Jack said yes and described blank as his good friend. Jack could not recall when he met up with blank that day, but believed blank and blank came to his apartment and then they all went to the party at blank. Jack then looked at his phone and found a text message string between he and blank. Same text message string FBI agent O'Neill photographed on the 21-year-old's phone. The first text was sent by blank on Saturday at 4:16 p.m. to Jack. It simply said, "Yo." Jack replied, "What's up?" And blank asked if Jack was still at the blank. Blank informed him he was, and he was going to get some food. Blank asked where blank was and informed him he was back at his apartment getting ibuprofen for his back. Blank asked blank to grab him a couple of beers if there were any left. This was the last text message between blank and blank on Saturday. So, whoa, when you stop and you really look at this paragraph right here, you'll see there's more than just the 21-year-old and Jack involved in this conversation, right? And Special Agent O'Neill was photographing this text conversation on his phone. Yo, what's up? And who were they talking about? Blank asked where blank was. And blank informed him he was back at his apartment getting ibuprofen for his back. Blank asked Jack to grab him a couple of beers, or blank asked Jack to grab him a couple of beers if there were any left. This was the last text message between blank and blank on Saturday. Sounds to me like there's somebody at Jack's apartment getting ibuprofen for his back. So it looks to me like the 21-year-old and Jack are talking about themselves and somebody else back at Jack's apartment getting ibuprofen for his back. So is that FBI agent O'Neill photographing messages for one of the much older, much more experienced assailants that's at Jack's apartment? After reviewing the text string, I informed Jack it appeared he and blank had been at a party prior to the start of the text string. Blank believed they went to a party at blank around 1 to 2, but he could not recall the exact time. He didn't recall seeing Maddie and Kaylee and all the residents of 1122 King Street going outside and taking the photograph everyone sees now. Blank knew Maddie the best. Jack knew Maddie the best. He had known her since his freshman year because they had classes together and she would hang out at the blank blank fraternity house. Jack said while attending the party at the blank, he made several trips to his apartment to stretch and deal with his sore back. Oh, no. So Jack is the one with the sore back. Jack claimed after the text string with blank began, he did not return to the party at the blank. I asked Jack if he remembered going to the blank house with blank blank. Jack replied, not really, then said that is why he agreed to go to the other bar with Kaylee and Maddie when they asked. He does the same thing every weekend. It's hard to remember. I confronted Jack with the information we had gathered. Reference, he and blank had been picked up by a fraternity designated driver, driven to get food and beer, then dropped off at the blank fraternity house. Jack responded that would not be out of the normal, but did not specifically recall. Sergeant Hopkins asked Jack about purchasing a 30-pack of beer and splitting the beers between himself and blank. Jack did not recall if they purchased a 30-pack on Saturday, but it was normal for him and blank to purchase beer and split it up between the two of them. He could not remember if they did it that Saturday because they were drinking all day. Sergeant Hopkins asked what type of beer they typically purchased, and Jack informed us it was usually Keystone, Natural Ice, or any cheap lager beer. That's some nasty stuff, by the way. I instructed Jack to refer to the text string between himself and blank and look at some of the communications on Monday, specifically where he was asking blank if he wanted the bag back. Jack read the string, then remembered he did borrow a bag from blank that Saturday. He and blank were at the blank house and Jack had passed out. The other guy had passed out. Jack took a bag from blank and filled it with approximately 15 beers. He believed he went back to his apartment because the bag was at his apartment and he had to return the bag to blank. Blank did not see blank again that day or night because Jack went to the bars and blank did not. I asked Jack how he got from his apartment to the corner club. Jack responded probably a designated driver. Jack did not recall the clothing blank was wearing Saturday the 12th. The next contact Jack had with Blank was on Sunday morning sometime. Blank was with Blank driving to get some food. Blank called Blank and asked what was going on at the house down the street from Jack's apartment. At the end of the interview, I asked Jack if he would consent to us getting a set of major crime fingerprints from him before he left. Jack agreed, and ISP Forensics printed Blank. At approximately 1:32 p.m., the major crime prints were completed, and Blank left the District 3 office. So as late as December 6th, they're hammering Showalter here. Now, I know that was a lot of information, and a lot of it I've already covered. There was some new information in there, though, because we hadn't uncovered as much as we had the first time I went over that. But it's this next part that is going to bring it all together. Now we're getting into the BAMs. Now, we've heard for a long time that this thing was a parallel investigation. And I've said it myself. It seemed to me like there was two different investigations going on. The one they've told everybody and one that has been hidden from us. I'm now to the point where I think there may be, I don't even know what you call it, 3 investigations going on that paralleled each other. One by Moscow PD, accompanied with the FBI and the ISP. One by just the FBI. And then a total other parallel investigation I know was going on. And it was just the ISP assisted by the FBI. Insane. And here's how I was able to start to uncover it. I'm going to give you the groundwork, and then we're going to finish all this up in part 2, because this was a ton to put together for you. Okay, now's where the forensic reports really come into play. And the first thing I did when they released all the forensic reports was take all the lab items, and I've showed you all this, where I numbered every single lab item in the case. And then I began going through all of the different individual pages and figuring out what actual evidence coincided with the different lab items, so that I knew what every lab item in this thing was. And if you go through the reports slowly, it'll actually tell you what every lab item was, all the way down to who all the buccal swabs were initially, until you get to about lab item 58, and then they don't tell you these buccal swabs. But this all took place after the arrest of Kohberger. But anyway, as I went through and I logged all of these, I noticed there was something weird, a weird discrepancy. And that was when you go through lab items 1 through 6. I mean, I knew they were the knife sheath, the swabs from the sheath, the swab on the back of the sheath. The DNA extracts from the sheath was 2. Number 3 was blood swab from the second floor, blood swab from the 3rd bedroom door, the DNA blood card for Ethan, and the right nail clippings for Ethan. However, when you go through all of the reports, you start to find that the DNA swab of Jack Showalter, for example, is lab item number 1. The DNA swab of Cole Barenberg was lab item number 2. The extracts from Barenberg and Showalter was number 3. The major crime prints was from Jack Showalter was number 4. The prints from Connor Chestnut was number 5. And then the DNA swab from Connor Chestnut was number 6. So I was like, well, that is kind of weird, and I didn't pay it much attention. But why would they have lab items 1 through 6 over here and have completely different lab item numbers over here for even like major crime prints, buccal swabs? So I went, something just isn't right. And then it finally hit me. And I guess the reason I never caught this before is just because it was so overwhelming going through 2,300 forensic reports. And even though I went through and pulled information off of every one, it didn't, until I put them all into their individual date box of when these reports came out, I don't think I would have ever figured it out. But you can see this is the first lab report, report number 1, and it talks about the DNA on the knife sheath. And you'll see that Case agency, Moscow Police Department. Investigating officers, Blaker. It's almost always Blaker, Moscow Police Department. That's who's in charge of these forensic sheets. And you can go through, for example, let's see here. All right, lab report number 8, MPD Dustin Blaker. Lab report number 8 again. Let's see. Here is lab report number 10, Dustin Blaker, MPD. You can go through lab reports all the way to 2025, and they all say MPD, Dustin Blaker, investigating officer. But then you find something that's totally different. And strangely enough, these go all the way back to the very beginning of this case. And you can see that on these reports, it starts at report number 1. Date evidence accepted, November 18th. Reference oral swabs from Showalter and Barenberg. Item 3, extracts from 1 and 2. ISP Investigations, D2, is the case agency. Investigating officer is Jeffrey Talbot. This is a completely separate case from the Idaho 4 investigating case. This case is being conducted by ISP Investigations D2. And it starts with them collecting this evidence on November 19th. Then you get to report number 2, again, Jeffrey Talbot, ISP Investigations D2. On December 6th, forensic scientist Logan Mason and I responded to a request to take friction ridge exemplars from one subject at Idaho State Police District 3 investigations located in Meridian. We were met by Lieutenant Jack Catlin. Mason and I recorded finger and palm prints from Jack Showalter. Well, I know it's Chestnut because you can see here in this email chain they failed to redact this right here on December the 12th, 2022. And it says last name needs to be changed from Chestnut to Chestnut. Reason for change, correct spelling of name. So as I know it's Connor Chestnut. Oh, and how do I know that this is Showalter and Barenberg? Because, I mean, they don't do a very good job redacting stuff, because item 1 is reference oral swabs from John Showalter. Item 2 is reference oral swabs from Cole Barenberg, both taken on November the 19th, which is all part of a completely different investigation. How do you know it's a completely different investigation, Pav? Well, you can see all the other reports from MPD and Blaker were all under laboratory case number M2022-4843. All right, laboratory case number 4843. But for some reason, all of these laboratory reports were under M2022-4870. 4870. And then they will issue separate reports under the case number 4843. Does this look to you like it does to me that ISP had an independent investigation going on that they wanted to keep out of the record of the other investigation? I got much more I'm going to share on this one.
But hero.
Okay, so what we have to understand is once we get right here, this is an entirely different case that they're investigating. This is 4870. When I say an entirely different case, I mean the submitting agency, the case number, everything. And it's both going off of the same offense on November 13th. Why would they have dual investigations going with separate case files? And when I say an entirely separate case, I mean down to logging of evidence, to receipt sheets for evidence submission, 4870. Same people are receipting this evidence, same, except this one is a death investigation. They have it listed non-homicide. So what is this about? Non-homicide death investigation. This is DNA buccal swabs from Kohberger and Jack Showalter. December 8th, death investigation, non-homicide. Completely different investigating officers. This is lab item number 4. This is fingerprint comparisons. December 12th, comparison only. Fingerprint comparison for Connor Chestnut and his buccal swab. The other one was, this is Showalter, just his fingerprints. It's a totally separate investigation. They even have separate chain of custody reports for the evidence. Completely separate investigation. Chain of custody reports, 4870. When people do FOIA requests on 4884, it's not including anything that's coming in under 4870. Showalter and Barenberg, reference oral swabs, DNA extracts. November 18th, Jeffrey Talbot, 4870, ISPD2 investigations, issue date 11/20. They started processing them on November 19th, swabs from Showalter and Barenberg, separate investigation. Completely different extractions. Let's go down here. Right here, 4870, report number 2. On December 6th, forensic scientist, or forensic specialist, whatever, Logan Mason and I responded to friction ridge exemplars. This was on the 6th. This was Chestnut's friction ridge exemplars, his fingerprints. Look at the dates here. It coincides perfectly with those police reports. As I was going through reading the police reports, it was Jack Showalter having conversations with Connor Chestnut, okay? When I said Jack and blank, it's Jack and Connor. And this is where they got their fingerprints, ink fingerprints. And report 3, December 12th, short tandem repeat STR profile from item number 6. That's Connor Chestnut's DNA. Eric Seat, December 14th, 2022. I finally figured out what the Eric Seat stuff is all about. December 12th is when they get these results back on this stuff, right? You've got to understand the dates in this investigation to understand what I'm trying to report here. Report number 4, Showalter and Chestnut. This is their fingerprint exemplars. Done on December 12th. Then everything stops into the investigation into Chestnut and Showalter on December the 12th. What does all of this tell me? And I've got more I'm going to bring to you in part 3, but I've got to get this out now for everybody to understand how big this is. So when you have 2 completely separate investigations, M2022-4843, this one is being conducted by MPD, FBI, Idaho State Police, and others assisting. Think about what we've read as far as just the police reports and the forensic reports. I mean, all these guys went to Boise and interviewed many different people. They went to Coeur d'Alene, interviewed many different people. They pulled evidence from the house and buccal swabs from suspects, compared them. They end up at the end with Bryan Kohberger in this case. But then over here, we've got 4870, and it doesn't make much sense because it started roughly at the same time as this one. But this one says a non-homicide investigation for some reason. And it starts all the way back with taking buccal swabs from Barenberg and Showalter. They must have, in my opinion, the Idaho State Police must have looked at Barenberg and Showalter and thought that the MPD wasn't putting enough focus on them. So they put their own investigation together and started focusing on them. They realized early on Barenberg wasn't a suspect. They thought Showalter wasn't either. But then the FBI got involved with looking at conversations from telephone calls and texts between Chestnut and Showalter. And the statements that they gave, along with phone conversations that they had, did not line up to the evidence. So, and that's Special Agent Ryan O'Neill that's focused in on this for some reason. He even took their fingerprints, exemplars, which I find to be very strange. And my members know I looked at that a long time ago. I said, look, whoever these fingerprints belong to, Ryan O'Neill took them, and there were some discrepancies in those fingerprint exemplars. And I wasn't able to put it out until put it together until recently who those fingerprints actually belonged to that Ryan O'Neill had taken, if y'all remember that, members. But then when we look at these dates, between December 2nd and December 6th, just the FBI and the Idaho State Police refocused their investigation onto Chestnut and Showalter. Looking through the records, it appears that they were also, in my opinion, possibly looking at Quinn Kelly and his movements there, as well as Ms. Dillon. So we've got these four that are really coming together in their investigation, their separate investigation. But I always like to put things on timelines to see what it tells us. And here's what it tells us. This completely separate investigation, M2022-4870, conducted by the FBI and the Idaho State Police. First thing we get is on the 16th, they pulled buccal swabs and statements from Barenberg and Showalter. They check them for cuts and scratches. They get their DNA. They cross them off as suspects. Between November 16th, though, and December the 2nd, they review conversations. They must pull some conversations. Who knows how they pull them, Mr. FBI? And they realize there's discrepancies in those conversations. At the time that they're surveilling, I believe, Quinn Kelly and working on Dylan Mortensen, because she had a December 1st interview with the FBI we haven't seen yet. Then for some reason, they start surveillance on Chestnut, and they hammer back down on Showalter. And then they go in between the 2nd and the 6th, and they get Showalter's major crime prints, and they get DNA buccal swabs from Chestnut, and they get his crime prints as well. But it doesn't stop there, because that's when the forensics kick in. We now know the forensic results got back on these things on December the 12th, 2022, Eric Seat being the one that apparently did the comparisons. Well, what happens after that that's major in the case? Because nothing else after that leads to Chestnut and Showalter. What happens after that? All of a sudden, they've got an arrest and search warrant for a guy named Brent Kopacka over in Pullman. They go in, they shoot him. But that was on December 14th. They issue the warrant. They shoot him on the 15th. What does all this kind of paint a picture to me to tell? Is the Kopacka case not showing up anywhere because it's under 4870, not 4884. And when I look at Ryan O'Neill, and I showed you what his expertise is, it's in confidential informant handlers. Now, all the POV haters out there think I'm crazy when I say that that is no doubt Tyson Farley that he's talking to that called a tip in from prison. They just changed some dates around. Yeah, they're brain dead. That is absolutely Farley. And anybody with a brain can tell that, and I knew it the second I looked at it. And that's how it led me to Mowich. But if his main job is confidential informant handler, you go through all of the police reports. The only time he pops up is when this guy's involved, or for some reason when these people are involved. So what does that tell me? If something happened that led to Kopacka on the 14th and these guys get their results back on the 12th and he's working with them, does that mean we've got a case of 4 CIs right here? And next part 3, we're going to talk about that backpack.
But here